There we go. Okay, so we're on the right track, and I want to say good morning to all those who are listening to the video and welcome them back to class. I'm very glad to be back. Um, and as we prepare for Shavuot and receiving, the Torah and learning about all the wonderful things that are included in the Torah and the Tanakh. It gives me great joy and great happiness in my heart to be able to learn Torah and share it with you and learn it with you because I have I've had over the past 12 years the honor of having this class and I'll tell you when you're not well, when your computer's broken and you have time to think, you really think about all the things you're grateful for. And I'm grateful for this class and for the opportunity to share with you Torah and the learning and the camaraderie of you wonderful, wonderful women. So thank you very much. And we're going to review a little bit today the chapter that we last learned, and I'm going to ask if anybody remembers chapter 27.
Oh
That
God.
that was a long time ago, I know. Um, but it was with in Shmuel, Sefer, Shmuel, chapter 27, and it was when David went to Philistia, to the area of the enemy, and he had to escape the horrible, horrible chasing of King Shaul, and he decided to go to Achish, who was the king of the Philistines, and he basically asked for asylum. And what happened was that Achish was thrilled that he was there. Thought that, okay, the king of Israel is now so weak that his chief warrior and the head of the army has defected and come to the enemy. But in reality, that was not necessarily the case, as we know. And during the time David was in Philistia, for about a year and a half, he was able to create a lifestyle within the area that Achish gave to David, which was Ziklag. He was able to create a mini kingdom. And while Shaul, when he was originally chosen by God to be the king of Israel, he was given many tests and many responsibilities to prepare him for being king. In this case, David is actually preparing himself to be king. He goes to a foreign nation. He lives in the same city as the king, but then after a very short period of time says to the king, look, I'm happy to be here, but you know, two people can't be in the same people of power can't be in the same community, so you rule your area, and perhaps he says you have an area, a city you could give to me and my people. We will be happy to serve you, but I think it's best we live separately. And there was a motive and a reason for all this. What he wanted to do was establish himself as a potential king himself. And so Achish gives him Ziklag, and he and the band of merry men that he had and who were devoted to him, not only in running away from Shaul, but defending Eretz Yisrael. They go to Ziklag. They set up basically a mini kingdom, and David is responsible now for setting up an army. He's got a city to run. He has to make sure that his people are fed. He is in charge of this army, and this army, interestingly enough, goes out and conquers other countries in the name of the Philistines, basically. But what David does is he leaves no survivors to tell the tale that what he's really doing is securing the borders of Israel. Now, everyone thinks that he's working for the king Achish of the Philistines, but in reality, he is setting himself up as the strong leader of the future of Israel, and he's making sure that he can run the army, run the government of the city, and run all the necessities that it takes in order to be a successful leader. Now, as we know, he is also devoted to writing during this time Tehillim because he is in pain that he is not able to live in Eretz Yisrael, in his homeland that he is so attached to, and it hurts him to be away from his countrymen, in which he feels so connected. So at this point, we hear that King Achish, with the thought that David would be his right-hand man because he's being so successful at war in the surrounding countries, he has come to David and he has said to him, I am preparing for war with Israel. And they go on horseback and they take a ride and they have a chat. And Achish says to him, look at the country of Israel. Look at everything you see across the border. He said, I have really given you refuge. I have taken you in. And now I expect that you know what you need to do for me when you go to war with Eretz Yisrael. David was very perplexed. He doesn't really know how to answer the king, who has actually treated him quite well. And when the king says to him, David, you know what you have to do, that leaves the question wide open. So David responds to him, yes, I know what I have to do. But what do you think that is? What in his mind does he think that he knows now that the Philistines are going to attack Israel? The king is depending on him, the enemy king, and now he's saying to him, you're going to be my right-hand man in this war. And now you know what you have to do. What, with an answer like, yes, I do know what I have to do, what do you think that means for David?
Quite the opposite.
Okay, what do you think it means?
He's going to have to find some way to either escape or prepare for war against this king that's been so nice to him.
Right, right. He is not going to accept the responsibility of killing his own landsmen, his own countrymen.
Exactly.
And
he also knows that ultimately he will be king because that was Shmuel's promise to him.
That's
and
correct.
so he wasn't being deceitful. He wasn't being anything but himself. And I think the other bloke misunderstood that. He misunderstood that big time.
Well, perhaps they weren't speaking the same language, but
I think so.
and there
I
was a
think so.
problem in translation. But yes,
Yeah.
you're right. David really knows that he's going to be the king of Israel,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's not going to be too much longer because Shaul is not in a good place. I'm putting on
Yeah. Yeah.
my jacket here because I'm chilly. So what we learn now at the end of chapter 27 is that David has indeed said to the king of the Philistines, yes, I know what I have to do. And in his mind, he knows that he is going to have to be there for Eretz Yisrael and Bnei Yisrael. Now, we go to chapter 28, which is about Shaul. We leave the situation with David, and we are now going to read together the the chapter that tells us what is coming. Now, let me just prepare you that this is a very, very interesting chapter in it seems like every chapter is chock full of not only information, but this is a very emotional chapter. And you'll see why, because in this chapter, Shaul knows that he's going to have to face the Plishtim, the Philistines, alone without David. David's nowhere to be seen. He knows David's not around. And that's his son-in-law. But he also knows that the reason he's not around is because David knows that that Shaul wanted to kill him. So Shaul has now presented himself as a very sad, almost pathetic character in the annals of history. And at one point, we may of reading of this chapter, we may feel very badly for him. But on the other hand, we have to say he brought this on himself. Every time he was told by Shmuel, the prophet, what to do and how to do it as king, he did not follow the exact words of the prophet or Hashem in many, many instances, and that is why the Ruach HaKodesh of Hashem has left Shaul and has left him with a empty feeling of abandonment, and he can really, I would say, as someone looking at this, I would say this is something that he brought upon himself. So let's take a look at this very sad chapter in Shaul's life, and let's see where we are going to go with all this. Okay, so I'm going to have on the screen. Okay, let's see. Chapter 28. Let's see, can you see that? Let's move it over a little bit. Okay, hold on. I'm going to make it a little smaller so you can see it. Can you see that?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start. Do I have a volunteer reader?
I'll read.
Okay.
Me, Adele. Okay. And it was in those days that the Philistines gathered their camps together for warfare to make a war upon Israel. And Achish said to David, you shall know that you shall go out with me in the camp, you and your men. And David said to Achish, therefore you shall know what your servant will do. And Achish said to David, therefore I shall make you my bodyguard all the time. Now Samuel had died, and all Israel lamented with him and buried him in Ramah, and each one lamented him in his own city. Now Saul had abolished necromancers and those who divine with the Jidoah bone from the land. And the Philistines gathered and came and encamped in Shunem. And Shaul gathered all Israel, and they encamped in Gilboa.
Okay, let's stop there because we've learned a lot of things in these few pasukim. First of all, the first two lines really, the first two psukim here really should have been included in chapter 27 because this is the conversation where David says, yes, I know what I have to do, and Achish says, you're going to be my bodyguard, and David says, over your dead body will I be your bodyguard. And so consequently we know what's going to happen here in terms of their relationship. But now let's pretend that pasuk number 3 is really the first pasuk of this chapter, and and we know right here it says immediately that the whole country was lamenting the death of Shmuel. Now clearly they were the whole country was very sad because Shmuel was, and we know that this is not the first time that his death is mentioned, but we are reminded for a reason that Shmuel is dead. And the reason is that that Shaul has nobody now to consult with. His prophet is gone, he's died.
Right.
His army general son-in-law is gone. His son, Yonatan, that we learned a couple chapters previously, had helped David escape his father's desire to kill Yonatan's best friend. And in a way, Yonatan's allegiance to his father was somewhat diminished because he actually heard his father say, yes, I want to kill David. So basically this man, this king of Israel, is all alone. His son, his army general, his prophet, and God.
Right.
Everyone has departed from him. They're gone. So that's the first thing that we have to understand in this chapter, that Shaul stands alone. Now, the second thing that we learn in this chapter, besides that it says that Shmuel dies, is that where did it say what pasuk about the necromancers? Now,
the end of 3.
Okay, and it says now Shaul had passed a law that anybody who was a magician, a wizard, a necromancer, a diviner, that did divination, a seeker, all that you could say all these names of what people were, a witch, anything that purported to bring back through magic, through bones and all kinds of avodah zara, in contacting the dead, doing strange things. All that was outlawed by Shaul. So now we know that Shmuel is not there to give him any help and information. God is not there to give any help to the king. And now we learn that if you were looking for somebody to a witch or a necromancer or a wizard to help you get an answer, a fortune teller or whatever, they were outlawed, they were banned, and they on the pain of death. So Shaul has nobody to turn to, absolutely nobody, and he's on the brink of war. So he's feeling very alone and, of course, scared. So let's find out, now that we know that he's alone, he's scared, he's going to war, and there's nobody there for him. Let's find out how he handles this situation. Okay, so let's continue reading.
Okay.
Start here.
Okay. And the Philistines gathered and came and encamped in Shunem. And Shaul gathered all Israel, and they encamped in Gilboa. And Shaul saw the camp of the Philistines, and he feared, and his heart trembled greatly. And Shaul inquired of the Lord, and the Lord did not answer, neither by dreams, nor by the Urim, nor by the prophets. And Shaul said to his servants, "Seek for me a necromanceress, and I shall go to her and inquire of her." And the servant said, "Behold, there is a necromanceress in Endor."
Okay. So so here is Shaul once again not obeying the law, even his own law that Shmuel, had basically told him, you don't need witches and diviners and necromancers and wizards. You need God and you need prophets. And so here he is asking, reaching out. It's like grasping for straws. That he reached out to God and God didn't answer him. It says, that God did not answer him by way of a dream. God in 6, he didn't answer him by way of the Urim, the breastplate, and no prophets. There's no one there. There's no one left for him. So he's desperate, and the only thing that he can resort to is witchcraft. So he says, "Find me a necromancer. Find me somebody." Now, is this not a contradiction in terms when he says, "Find me a necromancer"? His servant should have said, "But your majesty, you banned them all and there's no one left." But they didn't. They said, "There's one in Endor." So he says, "Okay, let's go see her." So let's take a look. I really want to show you a map. You know me and my maps. Hold on a second. We're going to leave this site a minute, and we're going to go to a map so that we can see where all this is going on, because it's very interesting. All right. So here we go. All righty. So it said that the Philistines came to Shunem. Okay, that's right here. Can you see where the arrow is pointing? My arrow is moving.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're up north. You see, we're in the valley of Jezreel Valley. We're at Mount Tabor. This is up north in the Galil. Here's Mount Gilboa. We are north. Usually the Philistines, and here they are down here on the west coast of Eretz Yisrael. You see all the Philistine cities here. Now, usually the fighting has basically, you see all these arrows, these are all the areas that they've been fighting in the south. And so going up north, look at, they're going all the way up here to the Jezreel Valley, is a departure from their strategy. And they are waiting here to begin the war. Now, where does Shaul go? You know, this here, this is Ramah. This is where Shmuel has died and buried. And now the army of Israel is going to have to go north as a departure to what they are used to in fighting the Philistines. So I just want to point this out. Remember, I told you that David was given the city of Ziklag. It's right here on the border of Israel and Philistia. And Gat was the city where Achish, the king of Philistia, lived. So they were very close to each other, but David had his own area. So now we're going north with the Plishtim. Now, I think this is a very interesting decision on the part of Achish to go north, because he knows that David, who had been clearing the borders from all the enemies, I sneezed on the truth. So he knows that the southern border is secure, and that by going north, we have other tribes who may not be as strong to support Shaul. So having a picture of where we're going to fight up here, let's go back and take a look at, let's see, okay, of the text. All right, so let's continue.
Okay. And Shaul disguised himself and donned other garments, and he went, he and two men with him. And they came to the woman by night, and he said, "Divine now for me with necromancy, and conjure up for me whom I shall tell you." And the woman said to him, "Behold, you know what Saul has done, that he has abolished the necromancers and those who divine by the Jedoah bone from the land. And why do you lay a snare for my life to cause me to die?" And Saul swore to her by the Lord, saying, "As the Lord lives, no punishment will happen to you for this thing."
Okay. Now, you know, if you think about it, here's the king who has banned all witchcraft of any kind, you know, fortune telling, seeing, whatever. He's seeking somebody that he has banned. He's going to her and asking her to do, you know, some witchcraft to seek somebody from the dead, clearly. And wouldn't you think that he would say, if she's smart enough to do all the things that I am asking her to do, isn't she smart enough to recognize who I am?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He doesn't say that to himself, but she says to him, look, by your, you want to read that again, where she talks to him?
He said,
Behold,
"Behold, you know what Saul has done, that
right,
he has."
right. Do you think she knew who he was?
Maybe not, if he was disguised.
But clearly everyone knew what the king looked like, especially if they were some kind of a wizard, fortune teller, necromancer, divine, or whatever, all those things. You don't think that when she says, what Saul has done, she could have said, what you've done.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I'm in a quandary. I feel like, are we being told that she really knew who he was, um, or does she pretend that she doesn't know who he is and will go along with him as long as he says, I'll protect you and your life is not in danger? So I guess that's something that I thought of, and I thought that it was kind of an interesting thing. And then Saul says, the Lord will, keep you alive.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
ahead. Let's see what she's going to say. Now, I do want to tell you that he's going to ask her to do something that is very controversial. He wants her to conjure up Shmuel. He wants to talk to him from the dead. Now, this is so not a Jewish thing.
Right.
And he knows that. And he knows it. And certainly the witch of Endor knows it as well. And so when she calls him up, Shmuel, Shaul cannot hear the answers that Shmuel is given. It's only the witch who is going to be telling Shaul the answers. So I want you to understand that Shaul is not going to be seeing or hearing the his departed prophet Shmuel. So let's see what she's going to tell him. Okay, go ahead. Let's start here.
And the woman said, whom shall I conjure up for you? And he said, conjure up Shmuel for me. And the woman saw Shmuel, and she cried aloud. And the woman said to Shaul, saying, why have you deceived me? For you are Shaul. And the king said,
okay, so see, it says right here, the woman said, it's not
Right.
that Shaul said, Shmuel said anything. She's intervening on both of their behalves. So now Shmuel is a little upset. He's being disturbed. If you were to look at this, he's resting peacefully, and now he's being disturbed. Okay, so let's go ahead.
and Shaul doesn't hear what she hears or
Right.
sees.
Right.
And the king said to her, fear not, for what have you seen? And the woman said to Shaul, I have seen angels ascending from the earth. And he said to her, what is his form? And she said, an old man is coming up, and he is wrapped in a cloak. And Shaul knew that he was Shmuel, and he bowed down with his face to the ground and prostrated himself.
Okay, so you see what's going on here. This could have been a hoax, because the truth of the matter is, Shaul does not see Shmuel,
Right.
only the witch, and so he has to believe her, and she's telling him all this stuff, that she's seeing. Now she says it's an old man in a cloak. It could have been Moshe Rabbeinu. It could have been
Right.
anybody,
Right.
But Shaul is convinced by her words that it is Shmuel. Okay, so this has a sense of what is going on here. He's disobeying his own laws. He's not even sure that this is really who he wants to talk to. But who is in control here?
The lady.
That's right, the witch. She's got
Right.
all the cards. She's been promised she's not going to be harmed. She's got the king sitting in front of her in disguise, and she supposedly has Shmuel Hanavi in the afterlife in contact with her. So it's a very, very strange, sad, very sad kind of a situation that we see the king in. Okay, let's continue.
And it's up number 13, 15. And Shmuel Shmuel said to Shaul, "Why have you roused me to bring me up?" And Shaul said, "I am greatly distressed, and the Philistines are battling against me, and God has turned away from me and has not answered me anymore, neither through the prophets nor through dreams. And I have called you to let me know what I shall do." And Shmuel said, "And why do you ask me when the Lord has turned away from you and has become the supporter of your adversary? And the Lord has done to him as he spoke by me, and the Lord has torn the kingdom from your hand and has given it to your fellow, to David. Because you did not listen to the Lord's voice, you did not execute the fierceness of his wrath against Amalek. Therefore, the Lord has done this thing to you this day."
Okay. So the one thing that I did want to point out to you is, remember, it said that Shaul reached out to Hashem, called upon the Lord, and the Lord and he did not hear from the Lord, either from dreams, the Urim, which was the breastplate, or through any prophet. But here, when Shaul is answering Shmuel, he's saying, "Look, I called on the Lord and he didn't answer me by prophet or by dream." He doesn't include the Urim, which was very important. That was the means of communication between God and either the prophet or the king. So he leaves a little bit out. He's not giving him the full information. And so what does Shmuel say? "Well, what did you expect?" He says. He's not going to he left you, he departed from you. God did not support you in your folly by not killing all of Amalek. And now you're coming to me, bothering me in the afterlife. Don't bother me, he says. Don't bother me. You created your own situation. Now you have to deal with it. And Shaul can't. He is unable. He is stuck. And this is the sad part. I guess it's the saddest thing. Here is a king who is stuck.
Like a beggar. He's
and,
like a beggar.
He's between a rock and a hard place, and the rock is basically himself. He is the one who has created this situation. All right, let's see what else happens. Go ahead. Start here.
19. And the Lord will also deliver Israel with you unto the hand of the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. Also, the Lord will deliver the camp of Israel into the hand of the Philistines.
What is this saying?
That you're going to die, you and your sons. You'll be here.
And what else? That Israel is going to lose the war.
Right.
Okay. So here's the big, here's what he was waiting to hear. What's going to happen? All right. Go ahead.
And Saul hastened and fell his full length to the ground, and he was very frightened because of Shmuel's words. Furthermore, he had no strength, for he had not eaten bread all that day and all that night. And the woman came to Shaul and saw that he was very much terror-stricken. And she said to him, "Behold, your handmaid listened to your voice, and I have put my life in my hand and obeyed your words which you spoke to me." I think it's put my life in your hand.
She put her life in his hands, right?
Right. Okay. And now I pray you, you also listen to the voice of your handmaid, and let me place before you a morsel of bread and eat, and you will have strength when you go on the way. And he refused and said, I shall not eat. And his servants and also the woman urged him, and he listened to their voice, and he arose from the ground and sat upon the couch. And
Can
the
I interrupt here for a minute, if that's okay?
Sure, go
This is
ahead.
a fundamental observation about Shmuel and his character. Now, the reason he didn't obey Hashem is because, especially with Amalek, is because the people said, no, no, we have to keep the cattle and the sheep, it's prime, etc., etc. He tried to be kinder than Hashem. So it's a fundamental flaw that he now unfortunately reaps the benefit of. When you're so busy trying to be a good person without understanding that goodness and the Hashem sees the bigger picture, you fall into your own personality trap, if I can say that. And that's
Absolutely.
very, 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 it shows very much here when I have to ask somebody, I don't know, if he had the sort of the strength to understand that if you follow Hashem's word, you don't have this. What do I do? If you know what I mean, that's just something that I observed with the way he's speaking and how he's not sure what to do.
Exactly. That we've repeatedly since the story of Amalek, we have talked about this flaw that
Yeah,
that Shaul always thought he knew better than Hashem.
Right.
yeah, yeah,
He could
yeah,
override Hashem's decisions and judgment. When Shmuel comes and speaks on behalf of Hashem about how to give a korban before going to war, he was challenged by his people, and he made the korban before Shmuel shows up. He didn't listen to wait for him. When God tells him to kill all Malek, the animals, the women, the children, everything, because of their history, he takes the matter in his own hands, and he makes the judgment that it's okay to leave the fatted cattle and the sheep because they're only animals, but everything was supposed to be destroyed of Amalek. And then again, time and time again, when he was going into battle and he is fearful and he looked to David to lead the way, and then he becomes angry at the successes of David on his behalf. He's got this personality that is in conflict with each other, and certainly he is not the kind of person who is secure in anything that he does. So you're right. You're absolutely right. All right, let's continue. Go ahead, finish the reading. Let's go back up here.
To 22.
Yeah.
And now I pray you, you also listen to the voice of your handmaid, and let me place before you a morsel of bread and eat, and you will have strength when you go on the way. And he refused and said, I shall not eat. And his servants and also the woman urged him, and he listened to their voice, and he arose from the ground and sat upon the couch. So it sounds like he gave in very easily.
Right. Well, maybe he thought, well, maybe she's not kosher, who knows what she's going to give me? I don't know, but well, I'm not even sure what the real meaning of that he didn't want to eat means at this point, because he certainly knows that tomorrow is his last day.
So, and he refused. And he refused and said, I shall not eat. And his servants, oh, I read that already. Right? Okay. The woman had a fatted calf in the house, and she hastened and slaughtered it. And she took flour and kneaded it and baked it from unleavened cakes. And she set it before Shaul and before his servants, and they ate. And they rose and went away on that night.
Okay, this is very interesting that she says, I'll take a morsel of bread, I'll give you something, a little something to eat. And then it tells that she really went to the extreme hospitality of slaughtering an animal and clearly roasting it for the king and giving him quite a meal of bread. If I were to think about this, these two psukim, I would think of Avraham Avinu when the angels came to visit him at his tent, and he says to them, "Come on in," and he washes their feet, and he says, "I'll feed you." And Sarah goes out and shechs a animal and makes bread and makes a whole big meal, and it's a very elaborate situation. So this woman, has certainly gone over and beyond what was expected of her in giving nourishment and sustenance to the king. And maybe she felt sorry for him. This was going to be his last meal. Who knows? But this is where we end up before the battle, the war with the Plishtim. And this is where we take leave of Shaul being alone. And now for the next chapter that we will start in our next lesson, we will see what happens when they go to war. Now, okay.
Oh, Rhonda, I have a question.
Sure.
Or I'm trying to piece together when, the fact that he can't know for sure that she's actually made contact with Shmuel.
Right.
But it sounds like she couldn't have made up what was being said. It sounds like it did come from Shmuel. I think it's a multi-level question. Do we know for sure now that she was not making it up and she had made contact? And is that something that, you said this goes contrary to Judaism? That whole thing is kind of, sort of hard to understand.
Right.
Can you give us more of an explanation?
Look, this is what I can tell you.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody came to me nowadays and said, "Rhonda, I understand you know a little bit of Tanakh, and I need you to contact the Shmuel and ask him ask him a question." Well, first of all, I know the story. Second,
Mm-hmm.
I know the king. I know what kind of personality the king has. Certainly, if it was, say, someone asked me a question about Bibi Netanyahu. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
read the news all the time. This woman wasn't
Mm-hmm.
stupid.
Right.
She knew who the king was. She knew what the situation the country
Mm-hmm.
was in. She knew that when they shouted all the time when David was successful in war. Remember the people, it said the people all over came out and the women shouted, Shaul kills 1,000 and David kills 10,000. The whole country wasn't that big
Mm-hmm.
that they
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what the situation was. And Shmuel was the prophet who went around to the people. He wasn't sitting under a tree where people would come for judgment or for nevuah, in his own backyard. He went out to all the people. He went to everywhere in the country and spoke of God and brought people back to Yiddishkeit, Judaism, and korbanot and shalosh regalim. He did everything. He was beloved as a prophet. So she knew about the king. She
Mm-hmm.
knew about David. She knew about Shmuel. She knew about the Plishtim. Certainly, everybody in the country knew whenever there was a war, and that
Yeah.
who was coming into their country to exterminate them, whether it was the Amalekites, the Moabites, the Philistines, the Ammonites, the Edomites. They knew who was coming in. So here she knows that she knows all the details. And it's almost like, I guess, these people who come on TV now and they call somebody up in the audience, they know all the details about the person they're going to ask a question. And so she knew exactly what to say because she knew the king was weak. She knew that he had issues. Everybody probably knew that the king was chasing David all the time, that he couldn't fight Goliath. This wasn't, anything that they didn't know, and they didn't even have WhatsApp. I mean, it was all very evident in a very small country that this was the situation. So clearly, she was no fool, and
Right.
and the fact that she really took a risk by saying, "You and your sons will be with me," for Shmuel tomorrow. She probably understood the peril of the country by the fact that the king had come to her and not to God. I mean, everybody knew about God, about God coming to the king and the visions, etc. Ruach HaKodesh. People knew all this stuff. Even though we don't think they were technologically advanced, they did know stuff. They did know stuff. So she took a big risk, whether she saw Shmuel or not. You and I will never know. And basically neither did Shaul, but he took her word for it because she said all the right things that were exactly what he was looking for. He wanted to know what was going to happen with the war, and that God wasn't talking to him. Would Shmuel please give him some information? And the witch gave him what he needed to hear. And it was true. It was all true. Look,
do you think? Oh, sorry.
yeah, I was going to say the fact that she knew that David wasn't around was probably the indicator that he was not going to be successful in war.
But do you think that because she offered him something to eat, I got the impression that the fact that he hadn't eaten, he was trying to do teshuvah, because that's one of the things we do when we fast. We try to do teshuvah. I mean, Esther Hamalka didn't eat for 3 days, or I mean, whatever. So maybe that's a way. I mean, look, I don't know a goyim mind, but for them, we eat and drink for tomorrow we die. So it's just that I think that's what they say. But I got the impression that the fact he hadn't eaten, maybe he was trying to do teshuvah, but again, his maybe lack of, I don't know whether I can say that, lack of faith or lack of understanding, said, yeah, okay, like you said, didn't take him long to change his mind. So yeah, okay, let's eat and drink because, whatever. But I think really the fact that he hadn't eaten indicates to me that he was trying to do teshuvah. He was, trying to sort of, I don't know. I just thought that.
The text may indicate somewhere in Hebrew that could be the case, but the fact is, he was solely focused on getting to this witch and getting the answers before the war.
Yeah.
So he was totally under pressure. So he missed a meal, so okay, so maybe he missed 2 meals. I'm not sure he was doing tshuva because I don't know that he was at that point anymore. I mean, we do know at the beginning of Shmuel when it says he was head and shoulders above everybody in his observance and his Judaism. But once that Ruach HaKodesh left him, once he started in his decline, he doesn't reach out to God except now. This is the first time we hear that he's reached out to God in a long, long time. So I don't know if he's doing tshuva. If you would like to ascribe that to him, kol hakavod to you for your kindness in giving him the the ability to turn to God, but I'm not so sure that he's actually doing that. I think he just missed a few meals, and he was, he didn't have the strength. And I think the information that you and your sons will be with Shmuel
Yeah.
tomorrow
Yeah.
was more than he could handle. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm certainly open for any discussion in that area, but I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure.
Okay.
But good point. Good point. Okay, that's a good one. Anybody else? Any other thoughts of where we're at this point? Okay. No?
I think that basically we have to look at Shaul. He was quite a pathetic human being.
He
That's the word that comes to
he
me
did
to describe.
eventually, right. He the whole story of his appointment to being king until the end is just one downhill swoop
Right,
of history, and it's very, very sad.
Yeah.
Because, but on the other hand, we have to ask, why did Hashem choose him to be king?
right,
You
right,
know, the first king, because everyone could say, well, the experiment didn't work. We got a king. Look what we got, and now what? Is this what we're going to be destined to have? Well, in a way, since many of us have learned Malachim together, yeah, the kings were not so great. And
right.
so luckily we had David and Shlomo, but other than a smattering of kings, the history of our kingship was not so great. So whether this is just a portent of things to come, it's hard to tell. I need a necromancer to tell you that. So, uh, okay. Anybody else got a comment, a question, a thought? I think that we know these characters intimately. David is sitting on the edge of his seat because he knows something terrible is going to happen to his beloved Eretz Yisrael. Shaul is sitting on the edge of his seat, knowing that he's not going to make it through this war, and unfortunately, neither are his sons. And I think that's probably what he laments the most, is that his son Yonatan will not be king, and he knows that after if he had to admit it in his heart of hearts that after all that wasted time of chasing David, of killing the priests of Nov and wiping out vast amounts of people on his quest to kill David, that he was it was a vain pursuit, and that his life was really, really not what he had probably hoped it would be. So it's a very they call a tragic, pathetic character in our history, and but from this tragedy comes something good, and we'll see what happens. We have to see what happens in the chapters to come. Okay, so hold on. Let's see. I'm going to stop the recording.